guys been seeing these illegal Disney posts all over your For You page like I have been, because they are super dark and creepy, but they unlocked a core memory that I didn't even realize I had. I was like, why does this all look so familiar? And then out of nowhere, it just hit me. And I remember that there was a whole story on Creepypasta called Abandoned by Disney. That's what all those videos like kind of give, but like on steroids. So let's set the scene. It is 1974 and Disney ended up opening up a private island called Treasure Island. It was later renamed to Discovery Island, but it was supposed to be like a wildlife vibe where tourists could come, relax in nature, something like they'd never done before. This is a real fact. You can look it up on the internet, but essentially Disney spent millions on this park. But since the year of 1999, this thing has been abandoned. There's been a lot of rumors as to why this didn't work out. There's been rumors about the water being bad, stuff about the workers, but essentially it has just remained a mystery. And this is where our story really begins. In Emerald Island in North Carolina, Disney was about to start another mega build that they were investing millions on, and it was going to be a place called Mowgli's Palace. It's supposed to be this Jungle Book themed palace, but obviously this is where the controversies on it started. The government came in and started to sell land that belonged to other people, claiming that it was for a highway. And the second the locals figured out what this was actually being used for, they started to refer to it as Mickey Mouse Highway. And while Disney thought that this was going to be super awesome and lucrative, everybody in the town disagreed. At this point, nobody could really do anything. Disney had already made all the right calls to the media, so it was getting spun a little bit better in the public eye, and all the houses of locals that were in their way was essentially destroyed. Obviously, Disney went ahead, opened it up. They started to have some guests over there. Surrounding towns were experiencing some tourism, but then all of a sudden, Disney shut it down without any warning. It was a win for the town, but a loss for Disney. I'm sure everyone on here knows what urban exploring is, but it's essentially where you like video or blog or vlog or whatever your experience at an abandoned place. Years and years past, this guy named Ben, having not thought of Mowgli's Palace in that amount of time, decides to look a little bit into it. He was inspired after seeing a vlog of Discovery Island and seeing all the graffiti, all the places where things have been torn down. So realizing that he's only like 4 hours away from Emerald Isle, like, I wonder if anyone's ever gone there and done any kind of expose online about it. And he didn't. It was as if the internet had been completely wiped clean about this place. But it is totally not uncommon for Disney to get rid of like any kind of online evidence that makes them look bad. But Ben, feeling inspired, feeling like he might be the first to get some documentation about this, realizes that Emerald Island is only 4 hours away from him, so he packs up an old Disney map that he has of his, drives himself all the way over. And what this man ended up finding kept me up at night as a child. So the only reason that Ben was even able to find this place is because of an old map that he had whenever Disney was promoting Mowgli's Palace back in the 90s. Thanks to it, he was able to arrive at a place with a lot of vegetation. Followed it all the way up to these main wooden gates, and by the time he got there, his jaw dropped. The wooden doors were in terrible condition. There was rodents all around with woodpeckers just eating the remains. The plants were absolutely out of control. There was a metal sign at the door that stated, "Abandoned by Disney." It was more than likely made by a prior employee as a small protest. He took out his camera and began his expedition. He made it past some rubble, taking pictures of everything, and eventually got to a garden that had a statue of Baloo in it, like from Jungle Book. Baloo is like adorable and fluffy, but thinking about this as being like this decrepit, broken down stone statue where he's just smiling in the middle of this garden, spooky. It was in a bad state, vines all around it. Behind the statue was the castle. Easily able to get in because everything had been broken down so badly. Inside there was both statues and the walls were decorated in a similar fashion to the film. There's various cardboard cutouts, blankets, food droppings, so we just assumed that this was probably from homeless people living in here. And after continuing to walk through and photographing some areas, I really hate this photo, came across a kitchen that had meat hooks hanging from the ceiling. He realized that each of the hooks were just slowly swinging, even stopping one for a second, letting it go, and seeing it swing again. Continued on exploring and eventually came across the bathrooms, which is kind of what you expected. Smashed toilets, smelly water, but the one thing that he thought was very weird was that the sink was still leaking and so were the toilets, which means the water source had not been shut off. He continued on through the rooms and started to hear what sounded to be like a radio, because obviously there couldn't be any people there. But he did remember that there were some cardboard, so maybe there was some people hiding out there. He was feeling a little bit disappointed by his findings and decided to go ahead, return to the main gate, but this is whenever he saw a statue of a 25-meter python. He approached it a little bit closer to take a photo of it. The python lifted his head and looked directly at him. Ben was absolutely shook, but this is whenever he realized that all the wild and all the exotic animals that Disney had brought to be a part of Mowgli's Palace, they had just let go. They were now living freely in the abandoned area. It just gets worse from here. Ben was feeling a little bit overwhelmed and needed to take a breather, but this is whenever he looked over and saw that there was a private underground entrance. Said that it was access for characters only and sorry for the inconvenience. So he got excited thinking maybe there's actually something exciting for him to photograph down there, and he was able to bend the metal plate just enough so that he was able to open the rusted door. And this is whenever he felt like time changed. He stepped to what looked like a post. I should not have put this on my eyebrows. Let me grab this. Did that take any? Oh, it took some eyebrows. stepped into what looked like a post-apocalyptic world. Nothing there had been stolen or broken. There was just notepads, old food, chairs, TVs, pins, scattered paper that was almost melted into the floor, and a room that was labeled character preparation. He wanted to go in, but it was closed. Tried to force the door open several times, but was completely unsuccessful, so he just decided to walk away. But after walking away, he heard a slight click and the door opened up. Walking inside, he was using the light of his phone, but he could hear a faint electrical buzz. There was a string of lights that intermittently flashed on the ceiling, and he felt as though they were going to burst at any second, but suddenly they just got dim. There were character costumes that were hung up all around the room like corpses. The image of all of it was quite shocking, and he walked over to a Mickey Mouse costume that didn't quite look like how it was supposed to. It was lying in the center of the room, and the fabric had deteriorated a lot. There was a lot of holes in it. One of the weirdest things about it is that the colors weren't right. It was almost inverted, white where the black should be and black where the white should be. And it was so startling that he just started to photograph the other costumes that were within the room. And picking up the head of the Donald Duck costume to get a better photo of it, he realized that the eyes were just a little bit too big and seemed like they were staring back at him. And this is whenever he heard a startling crash. Looking to the ground, there was a seemingly human skull that had fallen out of the Donald Duck head. The skull had crashed at his feet, and he just dropped the head and started to go back towards the door. But as he approached the exit, he realized that he was going to be needing proof if anyone was to believe him of this, so he turned back around, and never do this in real life, he turned back around and went back to go get a photo. But when he turned back around, this is whenever he saw that the Mickey costume and whatever might be inside of it was starting to move. Absolute disbelief, he was just backing up away from it, repeating the words no, 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 over and over again. Heart pounding, legs quivering, he picks up the camera to take a photo of it, but realizes looking from the camera that he appears pixelated. Only the silhouette of him can really be made out, and he drops the camera on the floor. Picks up the camera and it has gone completely black. Whenever the inverted Mickey says in a very low, disturbing voice, "Hey, do you want to see me take off my head?" As he did this, he began to tug at his large costume head. Slowly, this lumpy, blood-like substance started to ooze from it. And then at the sound of the tearing of the fabric, Ben just took off running. And before leaving the threshold of the room, he saw, etched into the back of the metal, "Abandoned by God." The story goes that he never took those photos off his camera, never wrote any kind of blog about it. When he left, he understood why there was no information about that area, and why Disney didn't want anyone to know about it either. They didn't want anyone like him getting in, and they didn't want any of this information getting out. This is one of those stories that I remember reading in middle school and just not being able to sleep for weeks. And even though this is obviously just a story, there are some very creepy Disney facts. So if you guys want to know any of those, just let me know.